Hey everybody, thank you for joining us on the Christmas edition and I guess the New Year's edition of the video podcast. Happy holidays to everybody. Thanks again for watching us. We're going to chat a bit on this video podcast about, I think I've done some work on some air travel prediction stuff that we can chat a little bit about. Some interesting new news on the Cuba front as well. Some new announcements there. We've been talking about Cuba for several years here at FareCompare, and also one of my favorite things, which is drones, since one of my neighbors actually just opened up a franchise in the North Dallas area, and some of the things around that, as well as hoverboards as well. And then we'll take a couple questions from customers today. And joining me today to kick this off is our editor on the site at FareCompare.com, Ann McDermott. Hey, Ann.
Hey, Rick. As you know, today is December 22nd as we record this.
Yes.
And it is officially the first day of winter. Now, is this good or bad for travel?
Well, for me personally, it's 65 and sunny out here in Dallas, so it's good. It's actually very, very good for people that do want to travel. Now, it makes it a little more complicated. Clearly, people are going to be consuming travel as we speak. Probably starting today, we'll see the airports completely crammed full. I know I went and picked up my father-in-law yesterday from the airport, so I know that that's happening as we speak. But for the month of January, especially the last 3 weeks in January, the entire month of February, save the President's Day weekend, which is Valentine's Day weekend in the middle of February, we have some of the cheapest prices we've seen in probably 3 or 4 years, especially if for travel on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Saturday. I just did some radio shows across the country and was amazed to see, even cities like Tucson and Spokane have really great deals for those last 3 weeks in January.
And I just posted from Aer Lingus a sale for Europe, and there are deals to Ireland for about $550 round trip. Not bad.
That just doesn't happen very often. The average fuel surcharge to Europe over the last year has been in the mid to lower $400 round trip range. So basically, you're paying the equivalent of $10 or $20 each way to go to Dublin. A very good choice. One of the airport there also has cheaper taxes as well, partially because of Ryanair, which is a low-cost airline there, as spurring on some demand. But we've talked about some of those destinations in Europe that are the cheapest, including Ireland, Spain, Germany, and the Nordic countries, Denmark, Sweden, and Norway.
Let's talk about a southerly country, Cuba.
Cuba, we had basically announcements for regular flights to occur to Cuba. It's still a little bit complicated, right? It's not like you can just go on. We're a meta search site, so we don't sell tickets. So whether it's on the major airline sites that we take you to, or the online travel agency, you can't just buy a ticket right now. But that's about to change pretty dramatically here in the next month or two, once they get some schedules and everybody's on the same page. It's been a bit contentious over the last 4 or 5 years as we've talked about this, and really, as we look into Cuba, they really don't have the infrastructure to have a big influx of U.S. Customers yet. But that probably is likely to happen if this continues on where we're at. They're going to need some serious investment in hospitality, hotels, and whatnot.
Well, as the State Department announcement merely says that the U.S. and Cuba have reached an agreement to resume commercial air travel between the two countries. Now, there's no timeline for any of that.
Right.
But then American Airlines almost immediately jumped in and said, hey, we're going to do it, although they too did not offer a timeline. But when do you think we will see regularly scheduled flights to Cuba from the U.S.?
I don't think we're going to see a lot in 2016, but I think you'll see at least the first few, right? Mm-hmm. So probably pick up a couple on a couple different airlines going into Cuba. They're already flying into Cuba already. My daughter actually has been taking world history in high school, and we were walking through the Miami airport one day, and they had a flight to Havana up on the board. My daughter said, I didn't think you could fly there. And so they already have flights already. These are typically for family members if you're in some sort of study group, or there's many ways to get there even at the moment. Obama, it's just going to be relaxed even further. So they already have the flights there. I just think, making them official where you can buy them on any channel and making sure that there's no issues with, getting the proper stamps in your passport and all that. I think that's going to happen officially before the Obama administration ends at the end of next year. I think that's one of their priorities.
I just want to put in a plug for our Cuba travel guide, which we keep updating every time there's a new development.
Exactly.
And it also includes some information on a debit card that is going to be allowed for use in Cuba. And I know that's been a kind of a real problem for travelers from the U.S. because they've had to come with, bucketfuls of cash, I guess.
Never a good thing to be carrying cash, by the way, anywhere. Yeah. And that's true. So how you pay for things and how you I do this all the time when I'm flying in Europe or even in Asia. Just pop the card in the ATM. It's not so easy over in Cuba at the moment.
Yeah, check out FareCompare, a Cuba travel guide, and I think you'll. I learned a lot when I was helping Rick put it together, and there is just tons of information in there.
Yeah, I learned a lot too. This is an area it's fascinating to me. It's on my bucket list of things and places to go, which is growing instead of getting smaller. So I need to get flying a little bit more, but we're going to have to work on that a little bit. So also, and some new news on drones. We saw. The requirement of the FAA to register all drones. Apparently, the website for doing that is up. Apparently, it wasn't the same crew that did the healthcare website because it was up in a month or so. But apparently, you can register your drone now. And again, I was saying earlier that my neighbor actually opened up a drone franchise. So I've seen drones in my neighborhood all day long. I'm not positive how I feel about that necessarily, but it's interesting where things are heading with that and registering. And of course, it could be a really big problem if it gets into airspace that it's not supposed to be.
Right. You have a lot of people are going to be getting drones for Christmas, I'm sure. So you've got.
I saw the numbers, like 1 million or so, isn't it?
And you've got 30 days from now, I think it is, to register it for free. So, you might want to do that right away. But otherwise, it's only $5. We have the link on our site about FareCompare's got things about electronics, drones, phones, hoverboards. And I just want to say that we also list FAA rules governing drones, and you might really want to take a look at that because there have been some problems with drones flying close to aircraft, which could be a very bad situation, and you're not supposed to fly anywhere near airports and things like that, so it's worth checking out.
It's a brave new world, right? We saw the guy, it wasn't even a drone. He flew his own contraption into the grounds of the White House a few years ago.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, I've seen the kids go nuts over these drones, and so they have them all. And we've seen a bunch of kids with laser pointers and whatnot. They can be mischievous. So hopefully we'll see we'll see how this sort of turns out. As far as the hoverboards are concerned, we have more airlines that are saying they're not even going to allow them in checked baggage nor in carry-on. TSA isn't going to prevent you from dragging a hoverboard through security. I doubt that the baggage police are going to search your bags for hoverboards, but just know that that's a possibility that your hoverboard could get confiscated at the gate, potentially.
Right, and it's not just U.S. airlines. Singapore, Malaysia, British Airways are just a few of the international carriers that are saying no, but here in the U.S. it's so far we know of Alaska, Frontier, JetBlue, Virgin America, and there may be more. It's something if you're going to bring one to a Christmas gathering or New Year's gathering or return back home with one, you might want to check with your airline's website to see what they say, because you don't, if they say, no, this can't fly, what are you going to do? Throw it away? Or
Yeah, it's not because the hoverboards themselves, although I've seen a montage of pratfalls that have occurred on hoverboards.
Yeah.
So I'm not positive they're the safest things on the planet, but it's about the batteries within the hoverboards. We saw similar issues with laptops with these lithium batteries that spontaneously ignite, and that's where they really are worried about those things. So that's
never a good thing on a plane.
Yeah, so your hoverboard is, if you're heading out for the holiday season, you might want to leave that hoverboard that you got under the Christmas tree at home. Otherwise, you have a chance of getting it confiscated, and you don't want that to happen, clearly.
Just want to throw out one last thing about phones. Everybody's got a phone
Yeah.
on the plane these days, and it's no big deal. You can use it, blah blah. You got to pay for Wi-Fi, of course, on almost every airline. But one thing to remember, and that some people have gotten into trouble with, is if a flight attendant or any member of the cabin crew says turn it off, you turn it off, because their word is law.
Yeah, they are the judge, they are the jury, they are the policeman. If they tell you to turn off, regardless of whether it's in flight or not, and whether or not it's in airplane mode or not, do exactly. We've seen a couple issues with that, and I'm not sure exactly why they don't want you to turn them completely off in some cases. But if they do request it, absolutely, you need to do it. Whatever they say, you should be doing.
So now it's time for predictions.
Yeah, I've been asked this question a lot. I've done some TV spots and some radio. A lot of the issue revolves around the four main things that drive to airline ticket prices: supply, demand. In this case, supply being how many new flights, if any, are going to be coming on. We have some airlines adding some capacity, some don't. Demand is where the economy is at. I mean, as long as oil prices are low, inflation is low, almost zero. I don't see the economy tanking, really. Our economy in the U.S. is a little bit better. We also have sort of some cities that have some competition, but for the most part, cities have been divided up by these four airlines that control 80% of traffic, so competition isn't that great. And then fuel prices being low, you would think that would drop prices, especially for things like Europe, for example, and some of these fuel surcharges. And I do expect some relaxation there, but there's really no incentive for airlines to, for example, discount during spring break. We've already seen airlines raise prices for the Saturday, Sunday departures, bracketing each school district city's travel period. So there's going to be no reason for that. The load factors are going to be close to 90%, so effectively every flight's completely full. So I don't expect a huge change. I don't see fares going up. One of the things I would note is that we still have a Department of Justice investigation going on about capacity control, airline collusion. I don't expect airlines to be poking anybody during an election season about this. So I don't raising airfares is probably at any level isn't going to be a good idea. Raising bag fees. We've seen some at least one. I think it was a congressperson that put out a new bill saying you can't charge for lavatories. I'm not sure if that's the highest order of legislation we need in this country.
Well, especially since we have heard nothing from any airline thinking, hey, that would be a good idea. But I guess he was being preemptive. Yeah,
you've also got a couple different things happening. You've got Southwest opening up their major international hub down in Houston Hobby in Texas. So you're going to see some more Caribbean flights, Mexico City beaches. That could drive down the price a little bit for that. We've also seen a major change in the loyalty programs. Now all four of the major airlines now have a revenue-based instead of mileage-based programs. And American, for example, reduced some of its redemption rates for Mexico and Caribbean, which also could help folks get to those places if you haven't been there. They can be quite expensive in some during certain times of year, like right now during the holidays. So again, I think if you're traveling during your spring break, if you're traveling during summertime, over the holiday season in 2016, not much of a break there. For those people that can sort of, carve out a Tuesday, Wednesday, Saturday departure sometime outside of those major things, you're going to see some pretty good deals.
But overall, you're saying that prices aren't going to go up much, if at all.
If anything, if at all, we might even see a slight decrease. We saw in the third quarter numbers from airlines, their financial data, that actual passenger airfare revenue was down about 1% in that quarter. That included a partially part of the summer. So that means pretty flat ticket prices. I don't see that changing a whole lot as we head into 2016. Clearly, the winter season with January and February having really inexpensive tickets, that's going to be a great time to fly. So that'll be a little bit slower season for the airlines, but picking up in March as we see spring break and then going into their busy season of summer. That's where they're going to really make hay next year.
If you can fly off peak, you got it made.
Yeah, and I think, again, next year will be the year of the next 4 or 5 years to fly to places like Europe, because not only, are fuel prices down, which should drive some of those fuel surcharges down. You just mentioned, even a wintertime flight to Ireland earlier for, between $500 and $600. What you're also going to see is the dollar being so strong over in Europe. I haven't looked at it lately, but the other day it was $1.06 to the euro. That means you're going to have lots of buying power when you're in Europe. That includes your hotels, your activities, your meals, and whatnot. So your dollar is going to go a long way. It could be a perfect time to fly to Europe next spring and summer.
Thanks, Rick.
Sure.
Now,
thanks.
We've got a question from a customer.
Yeah, sure. My favorite part.
This is Josiah. I hope I'm pronouncing your name, Josiah, because you're one of my favorite people, thanks to this question. He is from San Antonio, and he says, I'm traveling for the holidays, and the San Antonio airport is never that busy when I travel. I can get there an hour in advance and make just about all my flights. However, he says, I've never flown at Christmas. How much time should I expect to arrive to the airport? Plus, I'm going to O'Hare in Chicago, which is always a madhouse. When should I plan to arrive on my way back? He says, given that it's the holidays and all, and he finally adds, the things we do for family.
I see that now. It's interesting, yeah. Yeah, so I agree with you, the things we do for family. I'm sure that's running through the heads of many different folks. Well, here's a couple things, right? It's going to be crazy at airports, even at San Antonio. I know it's not a hugely busy airport during the week, but it can be busy. I've been through that airport a few times. And so you do want to, on the San Antonio side, it depends if you're actually going to be parking at the airport or you're taking Uber or some sort of taxi or somebody's dropping you off. That can save you about 20 minutes. But in general, you want to go about an hour earlier than you normally would. It sounds like Josiah was actually going an hour early. Look, yeah. I'm not saying if you're flying to Chicago to get to the airport 2 hours early. So my wife would tell me, let's do that. I would say, sort of 90 minutes on the outside, 2 hours to 90 minutes is perfectly reasonable. Now, on the Chicago side, that's a whole different story, right? Heading back to Chicago, I would even add on a little bit more, maybe an hour and 15 more. It can be crazy, especially at O'Hare during that time frame. I don't know exactly what day Josiah is traveling on. Some of them are not as busy as some of the other days, like the day of Christmas, the day of New Year's, depending on what days those are. The eves tend to be, and the eve eves tend to be the most travel days, and also the Sunday coming back since it lands on a Friday. So if you're on those days, you want to be there especially early. What's kind of interesting is that there is a pretty decent way you can check airport traffic. You can check parking lot traffic on many of the websites.
Yeah.
Both of those airports have that as well. You can also download My TSA to see what the wait times are at TSA. More importantly, what you should be doing, when you get up in the morning to head out to the airport during the holiday season, is hop on one of my favorite websites to check out is Flight Stats. They have a huge map that shows you whether or not there's going to be issues. That's going to tell you what the day is going to look like. Because even if you're in Chicago or San Antonio and you see in your flights later in the day and you see weather in New York or weather in Chicago, or in one of these major hub cities like Dallas, it's going to be a long day, and just be prepared for that, especially if you're traveling with family and kids. Kids really don't like being in airports too long, so make sure you have your bribes, whatever those happen to be, and those batteries fully charged. I've never seen more people surrounding a charging station. I actually saw somebody the other day when I was flying in that brought one of those extension cords that had 7 or 8 plugs in it, and they were sharing the Christmas spirit.
That's nice.
So that's something you could do as well if you know you're going to be delayed. Everybody at the airport will love you.
And for anybody who says, I don't want to sit around in the airport for 2 hours, and I understand that, but whether your planes may be on time and everything's fine there and it's not too crowded, but all it takes is one accident on the highway or the freeway or however you get to the airport that could really, blow you out of the water. So I always say, just go early and just endure it. So you have to hang out in the airport. It's,
I'm
that's
with you
life.
that I'm with you on that on the holidays. 'Cause I tend to be sort of a screech up to the door sort of person in general, always have been. But when I'm traveling with my wife and family, we go a little bit earlier. It saves me a lot of heartache, and usually it's not that big of a deal either. So a lot of the airports nowadays have all sorts of interesting things to check out. I mean, clearly, if you have music, you have your phone, if you have your tablets,
Yeah.
time passes a lot faster than it used to.
It does. It does. And we thank Josiah for his question.
Yeah,
And if
sure.
anybody else has a question, please send it to customer.service@faircompare.com. We'd love to tackle it.
Yeah, no, and remember, as we head into next year, you can catch more of our video podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, for example. Try out the new native app. We got a new iOS
Yeah.
release coming out. Hopefully, in the next few days, it's being approved in the App Store as we speak. Just type in faircompare.com/app into your browser on your phone, and you can download that app as well. It's called Adventurist, which we are adding at least a few events each week and prices to different events so that you'll have some clever place to go to as well as a cheap place to fly as well.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Andy.